been rehearsing what I'd say if you called me up. Going through the reasons we were right before the reasons were enough. I'd start with I was wrong about the small things, then the large. Then I'd ask how you've been keeping, and who else is in charge of that heart of yours. And maybe you've got someone who deserves you. Maybe you've moved further than I think. But if there's any part of you that's listening, I'm standing at the edge before I drink. There must be something on the other side of silence, something more than all this waiting in between. There must be a place where we stop being strangers, and all the things we couldn't say have room to breathe. On the other side of silence, I keep believing you'll be there. I'm not looking for perfection, I'm not asking for the moon. I just wanna find the warmth we had on one more afternoon. I know we broke some things that don't come back the same way twice, but maybe different is enough, and maybe that would be alright. There must be something on the other side of silence, where the waiting turns to something we can hold. Must be a place where words don't need defending, where we're finally warm enough to let the rest go cold. On the other side of silence, I keep walking, I keep coming back. On the other side of silence, I'll be there if you find the track. On the other side, on the other side, still here. The calendar turned like it always does quietly. January again with its cold and its light. I found your old sweater, still folded and orderly, back of the closet, behind what was right. And I held it for longer than I probably should have. Tried to remember the weight of your hands, but memory fades like a song on a Sunday. And I'm left with a shape, but I'm losing the sound. One more year without you, one more winter I've learned how to get through. I'm not falling apart, but I'm not the same man. One more year without you. I keep building the days the best way that I can, but the nights still belong to wherever you are. One more year, one more year without you. The friends ask me how I've been doing these days. I tell them I'm fine, and I mostly believe it. But the places we went still hold something that stays. A corner, a table, a light, and I see it. And I know that you've moved to a life I'm not part of, and I know that you're building something true. I don't wish promise you anything less than whatever you're after. I just miss the person I was when I had you. One more year without you. One more winter I've learned how to get through. I'm not falling apart, but I'm not the same man. One more year without you. I keep building the days the best way that I can, but the nights still belong to wherever you are. One more year. One more year without you. Oh. Somewhere you're standing in someone else's morning, pouring your coffee and brushing your hair. And here I am counting the cost of an ordinary January, learning to breathe in the air. Without you there. One more year without you. One more winter I found how to hold. I'm not all the way broken, but part of me's colder. One more year without you. And I'm grateful for everything that we were, but I'd give back the lessons for one of those nights. One more year. One more year without you. The smell of somewhere else. You hang your coat up careful like you're hiding it from yourself. You kiss me on the cheek and tell me everything is fine, and I taste the contradiction running under every line. And I've been watching you perform this for a while now. The careful way you move around the edges of the truth. I'm not sure which one of us is holding the denial down. Me for not confronting it, or you for going through. Your midnight with someone else and came back wearing something I can't name. And I've been loving you all by myself while you've been lighting up another flame. Midnight with someone else, and I'm the last to know. There's a number in your phone I've seen you delete. There's a laugh you've started laughing that I've never heard before. You're present but you're somewhere else on every single street, and every night you close a little more. And I keep making dinner, and I keep the silence kind. Like if I make no noise about it, maybe it'll stop. laughing. You spent your midnight with someone else, and I sat here keeping everything in place. And I've been disappearing shelf by shelf, making room for you in all this empty space. Midnight with someone else, but not another midnight, not after this. On a Friday in November, the leaves were all down and the front light was on. I didn't stop, but I think you'd remember the way that we left things the night that went wrong. And I've been carrying the weight of those words ever since. All the things that I meant and the things that came out wrong. There's a version of that night that still doesn't make sense, and I've been trying to rewrite it all along. After the storm we made, after the doors we slammed and the things we said, I still come back to the life that we had. After the storm we made, I'm standing here hoping the damage healed, wondering if you still feel what I feel after the storm we made. You called me once in the middle of March, 3 rings and then nothing, like second thoughts. I held the phone in the dark of the hall, counting the silence and counting the cost. And I know that I was proud when I should have been present, and I know that you were right about the things I wouldn't hear. But every season since has felt a little less than decent, and every quiet room reminds me why I'm here. After the storm we made, after the doors we slammed and the things we said, I still come back to the life that we had. After the storm we made, I'm standing here hoping the damage met me after the storm we made. I know we were broken, I know what it cost, but I'd rather find you than accept I've lost you after the storm we made. I'm still here. Every morning I would see you in the hallway. You were always somewhere else inside your mind. We said hello the way that strangers always say it. Never knowing what the other one might find. And I wrote 100 things I never handed over, kept them in a drawer beside the things I couldn't say. There's a kind of love that lives just past the shoulder of a life that keeps on moving the other way. I've been warming myself by a fire you never lit, finding all my comfort in a place that doesn't exist. I've been loving you in silence for a long and heavy while. I've been living in the margin of your smile. Fire you never lit, fire you never lit. Last September at the corner of the market, you were laughing with somebody I didn't know. And I watched you from a distance like a painting. Something beautiful I had no clue After I left, she kept the radio on, playing the songs from the years we once shared. Her neighbor could hear the whole night long, soft through the walls, like a count of a prayer. And I know because I drove past once in October. The lights were all off, but the sound drifted out. Something familiar, something a little bit older. And I sat in the car with the engine still going, trying to figure what all of it's about. She kept the radio on. She kept the radio on. Some nights the music is all you can hold, when everything else you were holding is gone. She kept the radio on, playing the stations we used to share. And I wonder if somewhere inside those songs she still knows that I'm there. I used to wake early and find her already sitting beside the old speaker we bought, coffee in hand and the morning still steady, listening to nothing in particular a lot. She said there's a comfort in something that carries the sound of a life that you once understood. And I laughed and I didn't know what she was saying. I understand it now better than I should. She kept the radio on. She kept the radio on. Some nights the music is all you can hold, when everything else you were holding is gone. She kept the radio on, playing the stations we used to share. And I wonder if somewhere inside those songs she still knows that I'm there. I don't know if she's happy, I don't know if she's fine. I only know the radio was on, and it played something that used to be mine, some ballad from another time. She kept the radio on. She kept the radio on. Some nights the music's the one honest thing that tells you you're not as alone as you thought. She kept the radio on, and somewhere in the October night air, I sat with the engine and listened a while to the life we once shared. Maybe this is what becomes of us when passion softens into trust. Maybe this is what we're meant to find, two people and the passage of time. Or maybe we just let the distance grow, and neither one of us was first to know. Whatever happened to wanting you the way the young and reckless do? Whatever happened to the urgency that made me run to you? I still love you like the bones love rain, familiar and a little full of pain. Whatever happened to wanting you? I think I still do. You didn't slam the door, you didn't raise your voice. You folded up our years like laundry, made your choice. No tears, no accusation, just a quiet afternoon and a box of small things set beside the room. And somehow the silence hurts more than the words would add. There's nothing left to argue, nothing left to prove. You wrapped up every memory in pages I can't have, and somewhere in the reading I lost you. I read between the lines of leaving and found the parts you didn't say, the spaces where your love stopped breathing long before you walked away. Between the lines of leaving stopped breathing long before you walked away. Between the lines, between the silence, I finally understand the cost of loving someone quietly enough that you don't notice when they're lost. Platform 3 at 10:30. Your coat was blue, I still remember when you kissed me once and looked away, like you were already gone before that day. And I told myself the distance wouldn't change a thing. The miles between two people meant nothing in the end. But the engine pulled away and took the only spring I ever knew and left me standing in the rain again. You took the last train to anywhere, and I've been waiting at this station ever since, watching strangers come and go through the evening air, looking for a face that doesn't make a lot of sense. The last train to anywhere, carrying you away from here. I kept your number in my coat, a yellow card with 7 digits and a note. It said, call me when the winter's done. But winter came 3 times and still no one. And I told myself you meant it when you wrote those words, but something held you back from picking up the phone. But silence has a way of making liars out of birds that promised they'd come back before the season turned to snow. You took the last train to anywhere, and I've been waiting at this station ever since, watching strangers come and go through the evening air, looking for a face that doesn't make a lot of sense. The last train to anywhere, carrying you away from here. Maybe somewhere down the line you found a platform, found a sign that pointed back to where we stood, and thought it over like I thought you would. Maybe somewhere down the road you carry half of what I hold. Maybe someday I'll stop waiting here, but not tonight, not while the track is clear. You took the last train to anywhere, and I've been waiting at this station ever since, watching strangers come and go through the evening air, looking for a coat of blue among the distance. The last train to anywhere. I'm still here, I'm still here. story was cold, but I sat there and read every line, trying to find where your heart stopped belonging to mine. And I keep telling myself that I'm reading it wrong, that the words on that paper don't mean what they say. But the truth doesn't wait and the nights get long, and I can't make the feeling of knowing go away. Who were you holding when you told me you loved me? Whose voice were you hearing when you called out my name? I was a stranger in your arms all along, close enough to touch you, but too far to stay. Walked through the rooms where we laughed and we slept, and I touched every wall like a promise you never once kept. The curtains still hold all the light of a Tuesday in May, when I thought I knew you and you thought you could stay. And I keep telling myself there was love in between. Oh, the silence and glances and beautiful lies. But a house built on smoke is no home, it's a dream. And I'm finally learning to open my eyes. Who were you holding when you told me you loved me? Whose voice were you hearing when you called out my name? I was a stranger in your arms all along, close enough to touch you, but too far to stay. Stranger in your arms, a stranger in your arms. Maybe you tried, maybe you meant it for a while. Maybe some nights I was the only thing keeping you here. But trying isn't staying, and meaning isn't enough when the person you're reaching for quietly disappears. Who were you holding when you told me you loved me? Whose voice were you hearing when you called out my name? I was a stranger in your arms all along, close enough to touch you, but too far to stay. Stranger in yours, I was always a stranger in yours. The letter is folded and back on the floor, and I'm someone you knew, nothing more.